He stepped out of the sleek black car, sunglasses hiding the fire in his eyes, and a leather duffel slung casually over his shoulder. Nobody recognized him, not the security guard at the gate, not the housekeeper who glanced up from watering the roses, and definitely not the girl he was here for. That was the plan. The entire estate believed he was just another new bodyguard. Silent, focused, obedient. But in truth, he was their worst nightmare in disguise. The man who once signed billion-dollar deals from behind a glass tower now stood at the edge of the Tang estate with a different mission. Revenge. Zhou Xingyue had everything stripped from him. Years ago, his family's company was destroyed by a cruel twist of corporate betrayal, and every trail led back to one man, Tang Jianhua, the cold-hearted tycoon who would do anything to protect his power, even if it meant destroying lives. Xingyu's parents died in disgrace, buried by shame and rumors. And he vanished, rebuilding his life brick by brick, face by face, fortune by fortune. Now he was back, not as himself, but as the man they'd least suspect, a bodyguard hired to protect the very people he came to ruin. Everything was going perfectly. His identity was clean, his story flawless. He'd passed all their background checks, slipped through the cracks of their high walls. And now he was just one step away from uncovering the secrets hidden inside the Tang family. He'd memorized their routines, studied their weaknesses, and waited patiently for the right moment to strike. All he needed was time. But fate doesn't play by plans. She appeared like a breeze on a hot day, unexpected, soft, and impossible to ignore. Tang Shi, they called her the princess of the estate, sweet, kind, a little clumsy, but beloved by everyone. Her smile could calm a storm, and her laughter was often the only warmth in that cold stone mansion. She wasn't like her father. She didn't carry arrogance or cruelty in her blood. Instead, she moved with a quiet grace, painting the world around her with gentle curiosity. Xingyue wasn't supposed to notice her. He wasn't supposed to feel anything. But the first time he saw her, it was pure accident. She was rushing down the marble staircase, arms full of art supplies, when her sandal caught the edge of the last step. Everything flew. Papers, brushes, tubes of paint. Time seemed to slow. He didn't think. He moved. One swift step forward, and she landed in his arms, paint smudging his shirt, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The estate, the revenge, the lies. Just her heartbeat thudding against his chest, and the soft gasp that slipped from her lips. "Sorry," she said quickly, pushing away from him, cheeks burning pink. "I didn't mean—" "Thank you." He only nodded, voice caught somewhere in the middle of a storm. From that day, everything started to shift. She began noticing him more, offering shy smiles, asking his name, leaving small gifts like coffee or snacks on his patrol route. She thought he was just a bodyguard, and for a second, just a second, he wanted to be exactly that, the man who made her smile, the one who made her feel safe. But he couldn't afford that, not when he'd come to tear this world down. Still, the more time he spent around her, the harder it became to draw the line between his mask and the man underneath. She wasn't supposed to trust him, yet she did. She wasn't supposed to open up, but one afternoon under the garden's old willow tree, she told him stories from her childhood, how her mother passed away when she was 12, how her father changed after that, how she often felt like a guest in her own home. Xingyu listened silently, fists clenched in his pockets, because the man she still called Dad was the same man, who had wrecked his entire world. And still, how could she not know? The estate held many secrets. Doors that were always locked. Conversations that stopped when someone entered the room. And that hidden lab in the West Wing. Off limits to all staff. Xingyue knew it was all connected. The truth about his family's downfall. The failed medical experiments. And the lies Tang Jianhua had buried under his empire. It was all here, and he would find it. But every time he got close to something, Tang Xi appeared, inviting him to tea, asking him to walk her dog, laughing when he didn't know how to hold a brush during her painting sessions. Slowly, she became his greatest distraction, or maybe his greatest weakness. One night, he stood outside her door, having overheard something he wasn't meant to hear. Her father speaking in hushed tones about an emergency procedure and the need to secure the girl's loyalty. That was the moment it hit him. She wasn't just innocent, she was in danger, and suddenly revenge didn't feel as clear anymore. He needed to protect her, even if it meant betraying his plan, even if it meant stepping back into the very fire he had come to light. But before he could make his move, everything spun out of control. The next morning, Tang Xi vanished, gone without a word, and the entire estate turned hostile. Doors locked, cameras installed, orders whispered in the shadows. Zhou Xingyue wasn't sure who to trust anymore. But one thing was clear. He wasn't just fighting for revenge anymore. He was fighting for her, and he was already too late. The estate was in lockdown. Guards doubled at every entrance. Security cameras blinked from every corner, and no one spoke, unless spoken to. The sweet calm that once wrapped around the Tang mansion was now replaced with a heavy, tight silence, as if the walls themselves knew something had gone terribly wrong. Zhou Xingyue watched everything closely, every movement, every whisper, but his heart was racing for a different reason. Tang Xi, gone. Just the thought made his chest ache in a way that confused him. This wasn't part of the plan. He had calculated every risk, every step. But her disappearance wasn't something he could have predicted. And what scared him most wasn't just that she was missing, but that no one seemed genuinely surprised. The staff acted worried, but it felt rehearsed. Her father, Tang Jianhua, had given a cold statement to the household, saying she had gone abroad suddenly for health reasons. But Xingyue knew that was a lie. There had been no calls, no bags packed, no driver, no sign of any normal departure. It was like she'd been erased overnight. That evening, he found a clue, a torn piece of her sketchbook, hidden beneath the garden bench where they last sat together. The page was smeared with charcoal, but one thing stood out, a word written in her rushed handwriting. Help. Xingyue gripped the paper tightly. The air around him felt colder now. He had to act fast. But how? His role as a bodyguard had limits. He couldn't just storm into restricted wings of the estate without raising alarms. He needed to outsmart them. He began moving through the house more carefully now. At night, when the cameras reset for maintenance, he'd sneak into old hallways, check behind locked doors, follow guards who acted nervous. That's when he started to piece things together. There was a secret beneath the West Wing, a room not listed on any blueprint. The access required a special card, one only Tang Jianhua carried. And the guards who took shifts there, they weren't the usual estate staff. These were outside hires, tall, blank-faced men who didn't speak unless absolutely necessary, and they didn't answer questions. What were they hiding? He had to know. Meanwhile, pieces of Tang Xi's past kept coming to him in flashes, small moments she'd shared without realizing their value. Like how she used to draw strange symbols, she'd seen in her father's study as a child, or how once she'd mentioned waking up in a hospital wing within the estate after fainting, even though there had never been a hospital there. Xingyu started connecting the dots. This wasn't just about corporate betrayal anymore. Tang Jianhua had been conducting something deeper, darker, something involving experiments, perhaps genetic or medical, maybe even something to do with inheritance and control. Tang Shi wasn't just his daughter. She might be the key to something he was trying to protect. Or worse, use. But Xing Yue wasn't alone in his suspicion. One rainy evening, he caught the gaze of another servant, an older woman named Auntie Lin, who had worked there for decades. She motioned for him to meet her in the greenhouse after midnight. He didn't expect much. Maybe just another warning. To stay in line. But what she said shook him. She's not safe here. Auntie Lin whispered, glancing around nervously. She was never meant to know the truth. Her mother found out too late. Now she's gone too. Xing Yue leaned in. Where is she? Is that she's still on the estate? Auntie Lin hesitated. There's a facility underground, under the West Wing. They say it's for security reasons. But I've seen the doctors. I've seen them take the girl there before. I think they've done something to her. He felt a pit form in his stomach. Why? Because she was never supposed to ask questions, Auntie Lin replied. And because her father doesn't see her as a daughter. He sees her as a legacy. The words haunted him long after she slipped away into the shadows. That night, he made his choice. No more waiting. He would break in. He spent the next day preparing, watching patterns, stealing a temporary access card from a distracted guard, and memorizing the layout from memory. At 3:12 a.m., while most of the staff were asleep and the estate dipped into silence, he made his move. He entered the West Wing. The hallways were colder, the air tinged with a strange chemical scent. He passed empty rooms lined with steel cabinets, medical files, and shattered glass. Then he found the elevator. It required a key code. He used the stolen card. The doors slid open. Below the estate, the world changed. No longer luxury and polish. This was concrete walls, buzzing lights, machines humming in the dark. A long hallway stretched ahead with thick doors on both sides, and at the far end a door marked, simply, Subject Room C. Xing Yue's fingers trembled as he pushed it open. The room was dimly lit. Monitors beeped quietly, and in the center of it all, behind a glass wall, was Her Ya, Tang Shi. She was asleep or unconscious, hooked up to tubes and monitors. Her face was pale, but peaceful. Her wrists were strapped lightly to the bed. A nurse walked past on the other side of the glass, not noticing him. He pressed a hand to the wall, his heart thudding in his ears. She was alive, but what had they done to her? He didn't have time to think. Behind him, the elevator door suddenly opened again. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. They knew he was here. Xing Yu ducked behind a panel, breath held. He was close, so close to getting her out, to ending everything. But now it was all falling apart. He glanced back at Tang Shi, asleep behind glass. And in that moment, one truth burned through him. He didn't just come here for revenge anymore. He came to save her, even if it meant losing everything. Zhou Xingyue stayed crouched behind the panel, every second feeling longer than the last. Footsteps were getting closer. He could hear voices, muffled, urgent, suspicious. He knew he couldn't stay hidden for long. He glanced back at Tang Shi, lying there behind the glass, unaware of the danger building around her. He didn't have time to plan anymore. If he wanted to save her, it had to be now. He moved fast. Using the emergency override code Auntie Lin had whispered to him just hours ago, He forced open the glass door. Alarms didn't ring, but the sharp hiss of hydraulics made noise enough. The nurse inside jumped back, startled. Xing Yu raised a hand. "I'm not here to hurt her. I'm taking her out." The nurse looked afraid, but not surprised. She didn't scream. She just backed away and said in a low voice, "If you care about her, don't let them put her under. Again, it'll erase everything she knows." That hit him hard. Erase? Xing Yu rushed to her side, undoing the soft straps around her wrists, pulling out the IV gently. Her eyes fluttered, her lips moving faintly. "Joe?" He leaned down. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." She blinked, confused. "My father. He said I was sick." "You're not," he said softly. "You were never sick. They were trying to make you forget who you are." Tang Shi's body was weak, but her spirit kicked in the moment she realized she wasn't hallucinating. She nodded, clinging to him as he lifted her. Just then, voices shouted behind him. "Guards!" The elevator had stopped, and they were swarming down the hall. Xing Yu ran, carrying her through a side exit, guided by memory and instinct. He slipped into an old tunnel Auntie Lin had once mentioned. A maintenance passage from the estates. Original construction. Dust filled the air, and the path was narrow, but it led them out beneath the garden shed. From there, they fled into the forest behind the estate, the darkness wrapping around them like a shield. By dawn, they reached a small cabin Xing Yue had secured long ago as a backup plan. There, Tang Shi rested, slowly regaining her strength. In the quiet that followed, the truth came out. Her father, Tang Jianhua, hadn't just been a controlling parent. He had been grooming her as a genetic prototype. The result of an illegal biomedical experiment meant to prolong human life. Tang Shi wasn't aware of it growing up, but she had been watched and tested for years. Her sudden blackouts, her treatments, the hospital wing that didn't exist on paper. It all made sense now. The project had failed with her mother. That's why she disappeared. And now her father had been trying to erase Tang Shi's memories, to hide everything once again, keeping her docile, controllable, and silent. But Zhou Xingyue had changed the course. Over the next week, Tang Shi and Xingyue released the evidence he had collected. Lab documents, recordings from inside the underground facility, even statements from Auntie Lin and the nurse. The news spread fast, a scandal broke, and Tang Jianhua's empire started to fall apart. The company board removed him, and legal authorities stepped in. For the first time, Tang Shi saw the world beyond the mansion's gates, not as a cage, but as a place where she could finally breathe. Xing Yu stayed by her side throughout. "I came for revenge," he told her quietly one evening, as they watched the sun dip behind the trees. "I wanted to destroy the man who ruined my family, but I never expected to find you." Tang Shi smiled, her eyes still carrying the softness that had drawn him in from the beginning. "Maybe that's why fate brought you here, not to destroy, but to save." Their story wasn't perfect. They were both scarred by the past, but now they had choices, freedom, and love, built not on convenience or wealth, but on trust, pain, and healing. As seasons changed, and the estate behind them faded into memory, they started a new chapter. Tang Shi began studying art therapy, wanting to help others like her. Xing Yue opened a foundation in his mother's name, supporting those caught in corporate corruption and abuse. They didn't need titles, power, or revenge anymore, because in saving each other, they found something far more powerful. The truth, redemption, and a love born from the most unexpected of places. And that was worth everything.